everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Liveni. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to do a book review. Please remember to subscribe, like and comment. And in celebration of Black History Month, I decided I was going to go on a reading spree, and read Black authors. And for the first episode of my Black History Month series celebration, I am doing Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. So this is a highly acclaimed book, and I just thought to myself, I need to read this book, and so I'm going to share what I think about the book. So the book was published in 1958, and it was first of its kind, and it was Mr. Achebe was inspired by when he read books that were speaking about Africa and African life. He didn't relate, and so he wanted to sort of like bring the perspective of a black person who's actually from Africa into literacy, and so he wrote this book. Then the genre is obviously fiction, and okay, not obviously, but it is fiction and it's a novel. But a lot of it, a lot of the themes that do come across and sort of like just the stories themselves are I would say real things that did happen, or at least he makes a point about a real situation, a real life situation. So yeah, he died in 2013, but he's done a lot of work. He's written a lot of poems. He's written a lot of short stories. He was also a lecturer, so he has done a very an immense amount of work in literacy, and he's known to be the father of African literature. So yeah, man, what a good way to start our series with the father of literature. Some of his books, it's this one, Things Fall Apart, Arrow of God, and the other one is No Longer at Ease. So essentially, the book is about the book is set in Nigeria, in sort of like just before the colonial era and during the colonial era, and sort of like what happens there. And it's mainly about one man, Okonkwo, who is the protagonist of the story, and basically talks about his life, about how he was a warrior and what kind of family he came in, and what kind of hopes he had for the kind of village that he was a ruler for, and he was a leader or chief, or however you want to put it. And it's about one man's life in essence, but he's an Igbo man, and therefore it talks about Igbo culture, traditions, and sort of like society and civilization then, in the era before colonization and during colonization. So, I mean, this guy, Okonkwo, has many wives, he has cattle, he has land, he has people who actually look up to him as a leader. What I found really interesting about this book was that it didn't have chapter names. So, for instance, it didn't have like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but it had part 1, part 2, part 3. And the first part is essentially Okonkwo, the life of Okonkwo, and how he basically is a leader in his community and all of those kinds of things. And then in the second part, we move on to when the white settlers and white missionaries start to come to the Igbo nation in Nigeria, and they start to basically colonize, and things fall apart. And then in the third part, we basically sort of see the effects of what the white settlers do to the people, to the nation, and basically the lives of African. And I found myself really so the book it's got a little bit of horror. I don't want to say horror, but it was a little like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared, like, oh my gosh, I actually need to take a break, because I'm like getting so intense, because how it describes like people slaughtering each other, people killing each other. Like, he's very like intense. He's an intense writer. He's a poet. He's a beautiful writer. He writes so beautifully. Like, the language that he uses, the poetic devices that he uses, the proverbs that he uses, the similes, just everything is just working. And but even though he's using all of these devices to sort of like tell the story, he tells it in a very simplistic way. What makes the book special, I think, is that this was this book was, I guess, one of the first of its kind where black people actually take ownership of talking about themselves, um, and representing their truth the way that they know it. So in a lot of ways, he we were presented with a picture of life and the intricacies of the culture of the Igbo nation. He delves deep into the social hierarchies that already existed within the nation, and he represents the so for me, here's what I want to say. This book is about Okonko, right? Who is a warrior, right? But it's also about Igbo people, but it's also about Nigeria. But in a lot of ways, it's about Africa. It's about African life, and the fact that like he tells the world that we did have things like education, we did have our own social hierarchies, we did have things like religions, we did believe in something. And it's not like when white settlers came into the land of Africa, then did we start knowing these things. It's just that we did them differently, and missionaries and white settlers came and then they wanted to impose themselves and make it seem like the things that we were doing were not civilized and were unjust. And so he gives you he explains the story in a very simple way, but yet you are left feeling like, oh my gosh, like, wow, this is such a complex situation, right? There is no good versus bad or good or evil kind of situation. He almost gives a very balanced account of both sides, both from the colonizer and those that are being colonized, and I think it left me feeling like I was in a way of like, wow, like we also had our own issues before white people came. There was a theme about obviously religion, how the white people sort of came with Christianity and their God that is so sanctified and untouchable. How the people who when they started, they just wanted a piece of land, and they come in there nicely, and then black people were like, no, yeah, it's fine, they just stay. And then the people that were started joining the Christian way of life, and not doing things of the Igbo people and whatsoever, they were the people that were usually not honorable within the Igbo nation. So it was usually the people that had miscarriages, the people that were considered weak men, the child that was disowned by their parents because they're just not following their father's orders or whatsoever. So it was usually the people who had struggles, or it was there was a theme about albinism, how albinos were not considered real people and they just killed them a lot, and how twins, for instance, were also like considered an abomination, and they were killed, and there were these twins who survived and now were part of the Christian group, and they wanted to be saved. So it was always these people who are not accepted into the Igbo nation that were first sort of like enacted into the system of Christianity. And that was pretty interesting for me. I mean, this is a novel and it's not factual, but it's something to ponder about, sort of like how the effect of people we consider nothing, how they then sort of like actually do change the narrative of the space. Alrighty, now time for the stars. I think I'm gonna definitely give this book a 10 out of 10. I am being a lot, but I do think it deserves a 10, simply because of the symbolism of this book, and yeah, I enjoyed it quite a lot. Without giving a lot about the book, I want to say that you guys have to go out there and read this book, or anything that is related to this man's work, because he's not just called the father of African literature for nothing. Okay, I was blown away by just the writing, the beauty of his writing. And when Okonko dies at the end, I quite, he doesn't say how he dies. It's just he puts it as if so Okonko dies. Uh, and it's like the people see his dead body and start assuming what happened to him, like, and they assume that he killed himself, right? But I'm not sure if Okonko really killed himself. And I guess that's for us, for the readers, and like sort of like make connection about what he was trying to say, you know, or what that meant. The fact that Okonko dies, but did he really kill himself? You know, I don't think he kills himself. Honestly, I don't think he kills himself. Something happens to him. But let me know what happened. What do you think happens to Okonko? And if you guys have read this book or anything by Chinua Achebe, please comment, because I think I am interested to hear what your views are. And yeah, guys, I want to encourage you guys to keep reading, and happy Black History Month. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment.